Sorry, guys. Going to play the intro and then get us rolling. Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. I want to welcome you all to the show today as we have breaking news. The first person to report it was John Rothstein. John Rothstein is a very well-known reporter. Let me share my screen here so that we can get the news up here officially. Boop, boop, boop. Breaking sources: UNLV has parted with Kevin Kruger, and we see Blurt's top reply right there. A lot of comments on this one yet, and yeah, a lot of people saying UNLV can't afford this. Ultimately. This was the news that I have advocated for really since, let me close that out, really since I started this podcast. It was right, right before the beginning of last season. I started the Let's Run podcast. It was about halfway through last football season. And the reason I started the podcast is because I had a lot of confidence going into last season with DJ Thomas, the Boone twins, Jalen Hill, Luis Rodriguez. I had a lot of confidence that last year's team, the 2023-2024 UNLV Running Rebels, was going to be a tournament team. Ultimately, that team lost to Southern. And then the first several months of this podcast were, the first month or so of this podcast, we're advocating for the university to fire Kevin Kruger. When did I think that Kevin Kruger wasn't going to be the right guy to be the UNLV head coach? It was probably about halfway through his second year. If you remember, in Kruger's second year, they had kind of developed a little bit of an identity as a team that ran a lot of switches. That played really good defense, that forced a lot of turnovers. I thought Kevin Kruger showed a little bit of potential, and then that team kind of fell apart. They went 7-11 in conference play, despite having an otherworldly player in Elijah Harkless. And that's probably about when I knew that Kevin Kruger was not the right guy for this job. It's about when I felt that opinion. Kevin Kruger was put in. I want to be respectful of him and his family and the Krugers, and a lot of I still don't harbor ill will. Despite last night I tweeted out that Lon Kruger, the Review Journal, there were forces trying to help Kevin keep his job, and there were. Lon, as a father and as somebody who has been involved in the Running Rebels ever since Kevin took over as head coach, and even before then, Lon has had a big voice in Las Vegas. He's got friends in media, he's got friends in the administration, and Lon was trying to advocate for his son to keep his job, which of course he was. I think that's kind of a given. I don't think that there's any doubt that was happening. So much so that I called it a fact that it was happening, and I stand by that. But yeah, ever since Kruger's second year, I have been pretty confident that he was not the right guy. And I want to talk a little bit about the kind of situation that Kevin Kruger was hired into. Kevin Kruger was hired after TJ Otzelberger left UNLV basketball for dead. He was a loyal guy who loved the Running Rebels. This was, I don't know if it's his alma mater because he came here as a grad transfer, but he did play here He was a part of the all-time great UNLV team that went to the Sweet 16. Not all-time great, but certainly one of the more fondly remembered UNLV teams that went to the Sweet 16. And he was a guy that he was kind of the answer to TJ Otzelberger at the time. This is why the administration hired him. TJ Otzelberger, after having a losing record at UNLV and falling flat on his face and failing as the head coach of the Runnin' Rebels, TJ Otzelberger got a promotion and ended up doing really well at Iowa State. To this day, he's doing very well at Iowa State. And so UNLV wanted somebody that was not going to leave the program. And the issue is when they hired Kevin Kruger, he didn't have any experience. He was clearly relying on the experience and the connections that he has built, through his dad, to build a good coaching staff, through recruiting. Lon has had a really big role in helping the program, raise money for NIL. He's been a big voice behind the scenes, and it really sucks, because I respect Lon. We sit near him at the games, and I don't imagine that Lon's going to be coming to the games anymore. Kevin wanted to be the head coach of the Runnin' Rebels for a decade, for a decade plus. I really think that. But you have to understand that when Kevin was hired, the program was in a terrible place. It's in a worse place now, but even back then, it was in an awful place. TJ Otzelberger had literally destroyed UNLV basketball, firing Dave Rice midseason, the Chris Beard fiasco, the horrific hire of Marvin Menzies. Like, UNLV basketball was in a bad place. And what UNLV basketball needed in 2021 was somebody who had experience, somebody who could build a respectable program quickly. And Kevin, for all of his, Kevin couldn't do it. I wouldn't say he was that far off. I mean, UNLV got between 18 and 20 wins in each of Kevin's seasons. 22 wins, I think, last year, 21 wins last year. But UNLV needed somebody with some serious coaching chops in 2021. And instead, they made an emotional and reflexive decision to hire Kevin Kruger for a job that he wasn't ready for. Because I just don't think a first-time head coach could have come in and done, a spectacular job at this UNLV position. It would have been a complete fluke, if Kevin Kruger had done that. We didn't put Kevin Kruger in the best position possible. It's not Kevin Kruger's fault that UNLV basketball has been in as rough of a place as it was. Brandon, I will get. I think Finzix is in a worse place now than it was before Kruger. I think it's in its worst place right now. Before Kruger, I mean, Otzelberger was a guy that in his first year had shown some coaching chops at UNLV. COVID really hurt the Rebels, and like it did all college basketball programs. But UNLV was in a bad place in 2021. Masked Rebel says, now go get a program changer. Absolutely. This is UNLV. I wouldn't say it's their last chance. It honestly kind of feels like their last chance to really make a difference and to revive the basketball program. Summit Bum says nepotism didn't win. What a fantastic Saturday. Shout out to Eric Harper from Blurt Reynolds for doing the right thing. Yeah. I mean, listen, there was legit pressure on Eric Harper to retain Kevin Kruger. There was legitimate pressure from real people with real juice. Not just Lon, but there were other people advocating for Kevin. People like Kevin. You have to understand that Kevin's not a disliked person. He's not like Marcus Arroyo. Firing Marcus Arroyo, I think, despite his supposed progress of the football program, firing Marcus Arroyo, I think, was pretty simple because people didn't like Marcus. But people like Kevin. Kevin, by all accounts, is a solid dude who I'm sure there's a couple players maybe that don't love him, but in terms of relationships, I mean, Kevin's a good guy. Nobody has anything crazy negative to say about Kevin the individual. I mean, I'm sure people have criticisms like myself about Kevin the basketball coach. Master Rebel says it's nice to see the propaganda machine of LV Media convince people that we didn't have the money. Yeah, UNLV, like, what you have to understand about this decision, UNLV secretly extended Kevin Kruger to a secret 1-year extension that upped his buyout after his first season, which was a horrific decision. I mean, this university that is clearly making, there's some financial issues going on at UNLV, but UNLV had, like, you have to understand, UNLV did not have the money to retain Kruger. UNLV athletics cannot function without a profitable basketball program. Under Kevin Kruger, the city of Las Vegas had completely rejected the Runnin' Rebels. They had. We were getting 3,000 people at games. There was an announced attendance of like 4,000, but it was like 2,000. I mean, there's no way they had that many people in the Thomas and Mack. The Thomas and Mack, a great building with legitimate history, was completely empty. And I guess I'll say, like, shout out to. I think that, and this might surprise some of you, but I think I'll say, like, shout out to the Utah State fans. Now, why do I say that? The Mountain West Conference tournament this year, and I was there. I was at the games. I did my broadcast live from the Thomas and Mack. The crowd inside the Thomas and Mack, our home gym, there were more Utah State fans in there cheering than there had been UNLV fans inside that building basically all year. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I'm just telling you what it felt like inside the arena. The Utah State fans were loud. They outnumbered the UNLV fans, at least by the end of the game, like 10-1. Like, it was horrific. It was humiliating. The Utah State fans who, I love the Utah State student section. I think they're fantastic. They're doing, if you're winning and you know it, clap your hands, chants at us in our own building. And we had a team that was fighting hard and playing hard, didn't have the talent because of injuries to really compete, but it was humiliating, guys. You have to understand how bad it was inside the Thomas and Mack on Thursday night. I didn't even do a show, yesterday or on Thursday night because, honestly, guys, I was feeling dejected. UNLV basketball is in an awful place. It's in an awful place right now. And, Kevin, he wasn't the worst coach ever. I mean, he was getting us 18 to 20 wins. Kevin won some big games as a head coach. He beat Creighton, he beat Utah State at home this year. They swept San Diego State this year, although that wasn't some golden achievement. The San Diego State team is not some incredible team. But the city of Las Vegas had spoken about Kevin. And a lot of boosters and people that give financial support to the program had spoken about Kevin and said, listen, this guy just doesn't have it. We're 4 years into this experiment. Kevin has consistently built his teams around transfers, has consistently built his team around upperclassmen, has had good rosters with excellent players, Bryce Hamilton, EJ Harkless, the Boone brothers last year, DJ Thomas, Luis Rodriguez. Kevin Kruger's had enough talent to do this, and he hasn't done it. BG says, respect to Kruger, was an amazing point guard for us, for those that witnessed the Sweet 16 runs in those teams. Let's progress. Yeah. UNLV is at fault here. It's not even necessarily Kevin Kruger. The bad guy in this situation is UNLV, is the administration that hired a guy who wasn't qualified to have the job in the first place. And, Kevin did the best he could. I think given there's an alarm. Given Kevin's coaching capability, I think this season actually was probably Kevin's finest work as a head coach. UNLV basketball this year only lost one game that they really shouldn't have lost, and that was that home game to Wyoming. But, UNLV basketball, Kevin also didn't build a very good roster around DJ Thomas this year. I don't think that there was any recruiting that was happening. I don't think that the Rebels had a lot of names that they were going to get in the transfer portal this season. The high school recruiting, Tyron Jones and Mason Abiton were really solid players, but young. I just didn't see, especially because you assume that UNLV was going to lose a couple of its good players. Like, I don't think keeping Kevin Kruger meant that we were going to keep DJ Thomas or Rob Whaley or Bear Cherry. I think some of his coaches were going to. Well, I'm very confident some of his coaches are not going to be here next year. Some of his assistant coaches, like UNLV put Kevin in a rough spot by hiring him in the first place. Now, he got a good opportunity. He did some good things, but his 4 years just weren't relevant. He didn't put forward a team that had identity, that had legitimate talent. He never competed in the Mountain West. I mean, last year was his best finish. He finished fourth last year, but they still got knocked out in the quarterfinal by San Diego State. They still weren't on the bubble to be an NCAA tournament team. He didn't do a good enough job. And I know that people that like Kevin and that like the Krugers, I know that there's a sentiment that this is kind of sad, and it is kind of sad. I'm sad for Kevin. I really am, and I want you know I get that I tweet things in jest sometimes, and but like tell everyone that we back up. So here's the thing. So this is exciting. This is a good thing for UNLV basketball. I need to know who they're going to hire. Um, I guess to kind of close out the Kevin Kruger talk, I will just say, like, thank you, Kevin. I think you gave it your all. I have had jobs that I wasn't, good enough to do, but I tried my best. And in fact, I would say I'm in kind of a position like that right now where, so it really sucks. My heart hurts for the Krugers. They are good people. Yeah, they're good people, man. And Kevin wanted to be here. Jeff Cooper says, good dude, but time to move on. Go get Jeff Linder at Texas Tech. Solid offensive mind. Angel fan says, okay, he's gone. So who's a realistic name who will take his job? So there are tons of people, tons of realistic candidates that UNLV could go after. I have been hearing things all season, chatter, rumors, guys like Eric Olin at UC San Diego. I don't know if he or Russell Turner's at UC Irvine or Eric Olin's at UC San Diego. I think that's a great name. I like Jeff Linder. I think that's a great name. There is some chatter about kind of retired coaches. Blurt, I don't want to curse you there. Blurt Reynolds has had a very specific name. Is his name Sam Buckford? I think is his name. Buckyball. Buckyball, yep. Scott Cross. I think those are both good names. Like, I could go over a list of legitimately like 50 people that I think would do a good job at UNLV basketball. There's a lot of college basketball coaches out there. UNLV is not going to spend. I don't think we're going to get we might get a Dan Mullen type hire, but it's not going to be like a name as flashy as Dan Mullen. What do I think? The funding that's going to exist for this head coach. I think UNLV is probably going to get to around $2 million to hire. That would make this coach, I think, the second highest paid coach in the Mountain West, $2 million. I think Brian Dutcher might make more than that. But Tom Crean, Tom Crean's a name that I've heard kind of floated around there. I'd be okay with Tom Crean. I would rather go for a guy like Greg Marshall than Tom Crean, to be honest with you. Obviously, I recognize that Greg Marshall comes with a level of baggage because of how his time ended at Wichita State. But that's a name. What's the other name I'd heard of before? He's at Florida A&M. I can't. There's so many. Like, guys, I've heard like 40 people that could be candidates for this team. 100% on Marshall HR hire. Yeah. Like, I don't think that Greg Marshall is going to be the guy, but like, I'd be totally in on him. I think he's kind of like what Steve Alford is for Reno, except he has a lot more success. So there's so many names, guys, legitimately. A couple of the names have already been crossed off. I thought Ryan Miller was a legitimate option. He ended up taking the head coaching job at Murray State. And Russell Turner, I think, is a great name. UC Irvine's head coach. They've had an amazing year. I'll tell you, it's not going to be one of the giant names. Will Wade, for example, is a name that we've all said for years. He's going to go to NC State. It's not going to be him. It's not going to be a guy like Ben McCollum at Drake. UNLV basketball probably isn't at the point where it was maybe 10 years ago, where it could go after guys like that, where it could go after Chris Beards and Mick Cronin's and those types of names. So, there's too many. Scott Cross. I think that's a real name. Yeah. Um, no, after he leaves from Minnesota. Yeah, there's some speculation that either Nico Medved or Brian Dutcher are going to go to Minnesota because both of those guys have, that's the head coach for San Diego State and Colorado State. Both of those guys have connections to Minnesota. UNLV posted and made it official. Made it official. Let me see. I haven't seen UNLV's official post yet, but let me see. I'm sure it'll pop up first thing. Where is UNLV's post? Oh, here we go. I will post this up. Let's post this up and read UNLV's official post here. Leadership change in men's basketball announced. So this is Eric Harper being quoted here. He says, "I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Coach Kruger for his hard work, commitment, and dedication over the past 4 years as head coach of the Running Rebels. While there have been notable achievements during his tenure, there have also been challenges. We have significant aspirations for our men's basketball programs, both within the Mountain West and on the national level, with the goal of competing in the NCAA tournament. Our expectation is to contend for and win championships. After evaluating the program as a whole, I believe a change is necessary to achieve these goals." So, solid statement about what you would expect from Eric Harper. Joe Arrigo's calling for Bettino already. I did not see that. Who's paying Kruger's buyout? The buyout guys will probably is almost entirely coming from third-party sourcing. It's coming from boosters. It's coming from people that want a change in UNLV basketball. And the school itself, which is obviously operating in the red financially at this current point in time, is not paying Kruger's entire buyout themselves. Yeah, so Richard Pitino, for example, I think he's going to go back to Power 4. I think his time at New Mexico has probably run its course. Tommy Tom says Dutcher made $2.5 million this year. If you can get his salary to $2 million, it would be second in the Mountain West. Bobby Hurley at Arizona State has announced that he's returning to Arizona State. And also, as you probably recognized, Bobby Hurley is not a guy that UNLV is going to hire. The UNCW guy, what's his name? I don't know. UNCW. Let me see. UNCW. UNC. Is that Wilmington? So this is Takoyo Siddle. I don't know much about him. He's at UNC Wilmington. He's a guy. It looks like they went 27-7 this year, made the NCAA tournaments. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that you could get. If you guys like names, go ahead and throw them on in the comments. I'll tell you kind of my opinions about my opinions about the names that you're putting in, because there's just so many guys. Like there's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of guys that we could go after here. Like Mick Cronin, for example, not leaving UCLA after what happened with UNLV last time. He's never coming back. I saw that name was popped up somewhere. That's not going to happen, and I don't believe that he's going to leave that Big Ten money to come there. Yeah, Bucky McMillan. This is a lot of people's favorites. I would be absolutely game for Bucky McMillan. Go ahead and search up Bucky McMillan. I believe he coaches at Samford, right? Is that where Bucky McMillan coaches? He coaches at Samford, yeah, and they're 22-10 this year. They ended up losing in the Southern Conference tournament to Furman, but the guy has a lot of personality, and I think he'd be a great hire. Other names, I have another few names that I wanted to go over. So Mike Bray, that's another name that I had heard about. Mike Bray. I suppose I'll share my screen here. I'll show you guys kind of what I'm doing here. There's just so much going on. I mean, guys, we're almost at 500 people watching this. This is an interesting one. Tim Miles is an awesome coach. Would love that. I actually would totally be in favor of Tim Miles. I know that it hasn't gone great, and I know that name wouldn't impress a lot of people at UNLV, but I think Tim Miles can really coach. I do not think UNLV is going to go in that direction, Tommy. But Tim Miles is an awesome coach, and I would love to have Tim Miles. Want to make sure that I'm not missing any names. Okay, so this is, I guess I'll post this, So this is Mike Bray. He was most recently at Notre Dame. Had a little bit of success in Notre Dame, went to a couple of Elite Eights, round 2 in 2022. Yeah, I think this is a legitimate option. You might see Eric Harper take a very similar approach to the one that he took in going after Dan Mullen, a guy that's not currently a head coach that wants to get in. Richard Reyes says, just heard the news. Cheers. Yeah. It's something that hurts, but it's something that was necessary for the future of UNLV basketball. So that's a name. Keep putting in names, guys. Craig Smith is another name that I feel like is somebody that could be chosen. I think Craig Smith can really coach. I don't think that he would be the flashiest hire, but I think that UNLV would probably do pretty well. He's been at Utah for the last 4 years. Here's Craig Smith's resume. Obviously, he was at Utah State. Took Utah State to essentially 3 straight NCAA tournaments. Obviously, there was the one season where COVID happened and they didn't go to the tournament, but they were a tournament team that year because they had won the Mountain West tournaments. I think Craig Smith would be a pretty good hire. Last year, they went kind of very similar to Craig Smith would be a good hire. I genuinely think they could do that. Legitimately good coach that could do some pretty good things for us. That's a real guy. Alan Huss from High Point. I love this name. I don't know that UNLV is going to be in contention for him because I think he has. So this is Alan Huss. He's only been coaching for a couple of years at High Point, but both years just incredible success. As you can see, I mean, this Alan Huss is a legit name. They're going to the NCAA tournament. They went 29-5 this year. No great wins. They play in a pretty weak conference, but High Point's definitely a school that Alan Huss was promoted to their head coach the last couple of years, and they very well could have made the NCAA tournament last year. I mean, they went 27-9. I would be very much in favor of Alan Huss. I think that's a real name. Yeah, and Nick brings up a good point here. If we hire an active coach, can we get some of his players to follow? This is a legitimate consideration when you're trying to make a hire. You saw Utah State excel with that, with guys like that they hired, like Jared Calhoun. And although I'm not sure if Jared Calhoun brought too many players from Charleston with him to Utah State, but you saw, legitimate people. Danny Sprinkle brought Great Osaburo and Ian Martinez, I believe, and Darius Brown with him from Montana State, where he was the head coach, to Utah State, and Utah State parlayed that into great success. Hiring somebody like a Bucky McMillan is a legitimate option because, and yeah, Blurt says that's why I prefer hiring an active coach at this time. I think I probably agree with that. I would rather go after somebody who has an active coach, who has an active coaching career right now, as opposed to somebody who's been off. Braden Clark, appreciate you, man. You're goated. I appreciate you. Eric Olin is your man. Yeah, Eric Olin is absolutely my number one hire. I'll pull up his coaching. Resume right now. So Eric Olin has been at UC San Diego for the last 4 years. They're 29-4 this year. So just really an incredible season for Eric Olin this year. I want to make sure I'm not missing any comments here because we're just getting up to an absurd number of people on this live stream. But yeah, Blurt says would be very, very in favor of hiring Olin. Let me run you through Eric Olin's resume this year. So they're 29-4. They had a very good win at UC Santa Barbara. Eric Olin also went into Spectrum Arena in Logan and took down the Utah State Aggies. Their only losses this season, they lost to UC Riverside and they lost to UC Irvine. They split with UC Irvine. UC Irvine has another guy that I really like in Russell Turner that I think would make a great head coach. They have a great resume this year. I think either of these two guys would be incredible hires, Russell Turner or Eric Olin. Both of them have had sustained success. I mean, Russell Turner took UC Irvine to 24-10 last year. Did really well. Ended up playing in the NIT last year. I think Russell Turner is a great hire, and obviously, I think Eric Olin's a great hire. I mean, look at this. Look at this resume. I mean, he's only UC San Diego only doesn't have the longest track record as a Division I program. But Eric took them to 21-12 last year. You have to understand that UC San Diego is not a program that has a lot of success. He's been the head coach there basically ever since they started. But it was kind of rough sledding for them, UC San Diego, to kind of hit the ground running in the Big West. But the last couple of years, he's really shown a lot. And I fully expect UC San Diego to be in the NCAA tournament. Andrew Schneider says, I know it's not happening, but I have been screaming for Randy Bennett for years. Yeah, I think Randy Bennett's done with college basketball. This is just a guess for me. I don't believe that Randy Bennett is an option for really any team in the country. Maybe a school like Villanova could get him, or if a Big East job opened up. But Randy Bennett's probably not going to happen. I think UNLV's budget here is about $2 million. So you have to understand, within that budget constraint, they're going to be able to get a guy that's had previous success, but they're probably not going to swing out of the park, they're probably not going to swing over the top of the mountains. This is another good name, Joe Pasternak from UCSB. Let's pull up him. UC Santa Barbara. Let's just try Santa Barbara. There we go. UC Santa Barbara. UC Santa Barbara hasn't had a great year this season. He led them to an NCAA tournament appearance a few years ago. Has had a little bit of success there. Not a name that I hate, but Pasternak is probably not the guy that I would go after. UC Santa Barbara, they're okay. But Pasternak's not a bad option. I wouldn't hate the world if we hired him, but probably not who I would have done. UC San Diego was Division II up until 4 years ago. He transitioned them into full Division I status, and in their first year is eligible for the tournament. He's trying to get them in. Yeah, I mean, guys, if I don't have any sway, I'm just a podcaster who covers UNLV. But if I have any sway, if there's anybody watching, Eric Olin's the guy to go after. Even if you have to wait for him to finish his season, he's the guy to go after. Gross from Akron would fit with Harper's previous hires. Yeah, let's check him out. Akron, woo. John Gross. Yeah, I think this is a legit option. You look at John Gross's career. He has had previous Big Ten coaching experience. In fact, UNLV played him. I think UNLV played him in 2013 and 14. But he was previously the head coach at Illinois. Was ultimately let go. That's a job that has a lot of expectations. This is a great name, John Gross. I think that would be a very good option. Keats. Let's see, Keats. Kevin Keats. This is another name. He was just recently fired from NC State. Didn't have a lot of favor in NC State. They went 12-19 after making the Final Four last year. I think this is a guy that we could afford and that would probably come. If you look at his achievements last year, obviously everybody was in love with DJ Burns, the 6'9", 275-pound forward that played for them. I think that's a legitimate option, to be honest with you. Not 100% sure that that's going to happen, but I would be okay with Keats. I think he can coach. Obviously, this year was an abject disaster for them in the ACC. They did graduate a lot of their players from last year's team, but getting fired a year after you made the Final Four is pretty crazy, actually. So I guess we'll see. Another name that I have heard that I don't know how I feel about is Bob Huggins. So if you don't know Bob Huggins, he was an incredibly successful. I don't actually know how old Huggins is. How old is Bob Huggins? So he's kind of like a Greg Marshall. He's pretty old, to be honest with you. Bob Huggins is 71. I also think that he. I also don't think that he. I don't think the school is going to go with a guy that old. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't hate it, to be honest with you. But he did have some pretty bad allegations against him. Um, Abusing players, I believe, is why he was let go at West Virginia. That was the allegation, at least. I don't want to speak to the merits of that at all. So a couple more questions. Um, how much of the roster returns next year? Depends. I mean, we really can't say at this time. Um, we don't know. We don't know how many people are going to be back next year. I don't think we're going to lose everybody. There's going to be opportunities, especially with a new coach, that's going to desire some level of continuity just with some players returning. I think you could see guys return next year. We already saw Isaiah Cottrell, our 6'11" forward from Vegas, um, announce that he is transferring. So that was that. That was not great. Um, there are probably players that are inclined to return. For example, Jalen Bedford has another year of eligibility. He did walk on senior night. We could see him back. I think there's a decent chance we'll see a guy like Bear Cherry back. I think there's a decent chance that Jaden Henley could be returning, which I think would be a good option. Um, the big question that everybody's going to have is DJ Thomas. I don't think DJ is going to return. I think DJ and Kevin had a very good relationship. Obviously, Kevin gave DJ essentially free reign to be the um, is going to Kevin Kruger gave DJ Thomas essentially every single opportunity to lead the team. Um, so one sec, I have to text my father. One moment, guys. Sorry about this. Okay. So ultimately, how much of the roster returns? Guys like Rob Whaley, I don't see returning. Rob is a guy that was dealing, I think, with some fitness issues coming into the year. I don't want to say that contributed to his back problems, but I don't see Rob Whaley returning. Although you never know. I would happily welcome Rob back, but whoever this new coach is going to be is going to have to put a much heavier emphasis on conditioning. I think that the Rebels really kind of dropped the ball on that area. And I think that the new coach is going to have to implement a heavy conditioning system in a way that I don't think existed with Kevin Kruger. Another guy that I could see coming back, I think Jace Whiting could come back simply because this year didn't work out with him, and I think he could be useful to a new head coach as a leader. Um, Basketball, the UNLV basketball team does not have their own strength and conditioning coach. They share one with volleyball. Um, Mike Cooper says they need a fast-paced, exciting coach. I agree with that. I actually, in the past, I've said UNLV just needs to hire a winner, but I think that um, there exists high-paced, fast coaches that would be willing to come to UNLV, and so I don't see any reason that UNLV can't go after a guy that will put an emphasis on pushing the pace and put the run in the run in Rebels. Now we've heard since Dave Rice that we're going to run this year, and Kevin Kruger, his teams have always been very slow. TJ Otzelberger, his teams were very slow. Marvin Menzies, his teams were medium paced at best. I think that there are coaches that could implement a fast style. I don't think that I would put that as the number one priority. But if you could get a guy that could push the pace, that could get the running Rebels running up and down the court, I think that would probably be a good idea. So I guess we shall see. Are there any more announcements from the school? Um, I do not see any more announcements for the school. We have announcements from. I guess I'm going to share my Twitter screen just so we can see this. I want to make sure that we're getting all the news, guys. So you guys get to see my Twitter feed. Here we go. You guys can see I'm live here. Um, there's Joe Arrigo's tweets. Braden Clark, there you are, Braden. Eric Olin has been my number one name for UNLV for months now. Would be the best and absolute home run hire. UNLV, absolutely. Anthem Rebel was wrong. Yeah, Anthem was saying that there was. Appreciate you too, guys. Portal opens in 8 days. So I don't envision a coach is going to be hired immediately just because of they're going to be chasing after guys probably that could be coaching right now, and they want to keep their pool open to that. But they need to get a guy as quickly as possible. Because the portal opens in 8 days, and they need to let a guy put a staff together as quick as they can because it's going to be a mad dash. It's going to be an absolute mad dash. More names. March just got a little more interesting. Yeah, there's Anthony Marshall. Anthony Marshall is one of my favorite. He was my favorites. Coach Rebel guy. Always the number one source of UNLV news. Coach Rebel guy. He is the lead reporter, as we say. Reno hater with this gem. Thank you, Eric Harper. Yeah, I mean, like Eric Harper's caught a lot of strays from me because of the Pac-12 UNLV situation. And last night, I had heard rumblings that there were efforts being made to save Kevin's job, and so the tweet that I sent out, that we needed to, move in a different direction. I implored people to personally email Eric Harper, and I know for a fact that we got quite a few people flooding this guy's inbox. It sucked to do that because I don't like advocating, for somebody to lose their job, but I also like UNLV basketball a lot more than I don't like that. So Paloma, she is one of the main UNLV reporters. Kruger is fired after having served as the Running Rebel head coach. Here we go, Barstool UNLV. The Kruger era is over. You're killing me, guys. You're killing me. Thanks for the memory, Kev. We had a guy that wore this T-shirt to the Boise State game. Nepotism never wins. We're finally free. This is sad, man. This is sad. Callie Finn, she is the best reporter for UNLV sports. And I think that, and she announced it officially with the RJ. So guys, wait, where do we get? What do we get? Do we missing anything? Are we missing anything? I don't think we're missing anything. So I think that this is about going to be it. I'm sure that we're going to get more information kind of as the season goes along. Leadership change in men's basketball from UNLV Athletics Instagram. Is that part of the separation agreement? Can't say he is getting fired. So this is the language that people will use when they're letting somebody go generally. And Villanova, for example, when they fired Kyle Neptune, they said, Villanova's parting ways with Kyle Neptune. This is just basic standard language. So there you go. There you go. If there are any more names that you guys want, I want to make sure that I'm not missing comments because sometimes the comments come in out of order. Where do we got? What do we got? Anybody else? Nearly beat SDSU in back-to-back years. Yeah, Eric Olin, again, the guy that I love. He took San Diego State to the wire in each of his seasons. Here's another name that's interesting, and it's a name that if they hired this person, I would be ecstatic. I would be excited. Dave Rice. Now, look, I understand that there's going to be some visceral, Dave Rice, Dave Rice can coach. He can recruit. He is UNLV. He is actually UNLV royalty. Not that Kevin Kruger isn't a UNLV great, but I'd be totally game for Dave Rice. We've seen that Dave Rice can make it to the NCAA tournament as a head coach of UNLV basketball. He's had 10 years off. He's done pretty well at Salt Lake, up at Salt Lake Community College as a head coach up there. I'd be down for that. I don't think the university is going to go that way. Don't get it twisted. I don't think that's going to happen. But Dave Rice is a good man. who is, in my mind, one of the best people that has ever coached, or been affiliated with UNLV. Um, and yeah, yeah, this is kind of the last. Kevin was the last vestige of uh, Desiree Reed Francois, who was our athletic director, who is now serving as the athletic director at Reno University. So ultimately, she was an awful athletic director, terrible, horrendous, who set UNLV back a long ways. And Kevin Kruger was her hire. And ultimately, you know, she was the Marcus Arroyo hire. Her and Tina Kunzer Murphy, back-to-back athletic directors, absolutely tanked UNLV. She did hire Lindy LaRock. Yes, I believe Lindy and Kevin were hired the exact same time. So I hope that the UNLV Lady Rebels can make it to the NCAA tournament. So she did hire Lindy LaRock, but Desiree Reed Francois, our previous athletic director before Eric Harper, is gone. So yeah, Reno University, we'll see what they do but we'll see what they do. Reno University has Steve Alford currently as their head coach, and I'd rather be us than them right now. Although they have had more success in their recent past than we have. But Reno University is stuck with Steve Alford as their head coach, whereas we get to make a change. And so, yeah, I think that's probably it, guys. I think that we've probably hit. I think that we've probably hit over all the points. I guess I will. I guess that I will repeat, a few of the things. But if you like some of the names, I will put out a detailed list. I'm going to do a podcast where I'm going to give you guys, my 10 favorite names. Obviously, that my favorite name is Eric Olen. When we get more information, I will go live again to talk about this. But Eric Olen's the guy that I want. Eric Olen's the guy that I want. I will say that to Kevin, thank you for the efforts that you put in for the program. Kevin's a good man, good father, a guy who really wanted to succeed, who really did everything that he could to succeed. Just came up short, just didn't quite have it. And that's okay. I don't think that Kevin Kruger isn't going to have a bright future. I think he will probably get at least an assistant coaching job. He will probably get another head coaching job at some point in his career. But Kevin, we bid adieu. Hypothetical from Tommy Tom says, hypothetical, if you could pick any current Mountain West coach to be UNLV's head coach, who would it be? Nico Medved from Colorado State. Obviously, Brian Dutcher has the most recent success, having taken San Diego State to the Final Four. He's a little older, Brian Dutcher. Not that Nico Medved is some crazy young guy. I don't know enough about Jared Calhoun. I don't think that Colorado State is some unbelievable basketball power that has unbelievable momentum like Utah State or San Diego State does. But if I could pick any Mountain West coach to be UNLV's head coach, it would be Nico Medved. I think he is an excellent defensive coach. I think he puts forth really good offensive principles that lead to consistent success for his teams. That's what I would probably say. I don't know how much I buy it. Richard Pitino is a very good head coach at New Mexico. I don't think he's going to be at New Mexico very much longer, but Richard Pitino is a very good coach down there. Jared Calhoun's a good coach for Utah State. I would actually I wouldn't mind having Leon Rice as their head coach. There was a chance in 2016 after we moved on from Dave Rice that we could have hired Leon Rice to be our head coach, and I think that would have been a good decision. There was a chance. I don't know if it would have happened or anything, but Leon Rice is a very good head coach at Boise State. There's a lot of good head coaches at UNLV. In the Mountain West. In the new Mountain West, I wouldn't pick Steve Alford. I don't think Steve Alford's, I think Steve Alford's kind of run his course. And yeah, I mean, if you want to say the future Mountain West, the guy that I would love to hire as UNLV's head coach, that will never happen because, believe it or not, this school actually pays more than UNLV is going to pay. But the guy that I like the most is Bryce Drew down there at Grand Canyon. He's an incredible head coach. He's being paid a lot. I think he's being paid like $3 million at Grand Canyon. That school has serious money behind it. It's a for-profit school. So Bryce Drew is an incredible head coach, and I think that Grand Canyon is going to be a legitimate power in the new Mountain West. And it was a good ad. I was pretty happy with the Grand Canyon ad. When you start complaining about NAL, your time is running out, Alford. Yeah, I think that I think in Reno, Steve Alford brought in some players that had pretty, like, I think a guy like Kobe Young, their 6'9", really talented forward who scored a ton. I think Reno spent some serious money on him and a couple of other players. And when you have a team that you spend a lot of money on and it doesn't really work out like Reno had this year, it brings a lot of strife into a program. And I think that's ultimately what happened with Reno this season. So will this new head coach have legitimate success? Yeah, I think he will. I think he will. I think there's going to be money backing the program. I think there's going to be NIL money. I think that people are going to really buy into this new coach. They're going to hire somebody with legitimate experience, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So, guys, I think I'm going to close it out there. I hate closing it out because the number, we just keep getting more people watching. But appreciate the Krugers for all their hard work and efforts. I appreciate all of you for jumping on the show. What's crazy to me is, and I'll close out with this, I'll do a little monologue and then I'll close it out. We have 650 people watching some random podcaster, Twitter guy. That's what I am. I run the Let's Run podcast. I love it. Please subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to the podcast. Like this tweet, retweet it, get it going. Let people see this breakdown. 650 people watching. Like, people are paying attention to what UNLV basketball does, even if they're not at the games, even if they're not always tweeting about it. UNLV basketball is a brand that still has some level of power. Now, it's not relevant right now as a brand. Don't get me wrong. But the minute that UNLV basketball starts winning again, the Thomas and Mack is going to be a fantastic home court environment. This new Pac-12 Mountain West situation is not going to kill UNLV basketball. UNLV basketball, just because of its geography, its location, its history, has scheduling advantages over tons of teams, like most any team in the country. UNLV can schedule home and homes with Memphis. They can schedule, semi-home games against Creighton. They can get really good games at the Thomas and Mack. The new Mountain West in basketball will still have some good teams: New Mexico, Reno, and Grand Canyon. Martin says, is there a way I can listen to this from the beginning? I'm not sure how it all works. I think you should be able to rewind. There's a lot of juicy stuff at the beginning, Martin, that you're probably going to want to hear. But Rat Pack says, I hope the next coach pays you some excitement. I think Bucky is the guy for that. I agree. Bucky McMillan is the guy for that. So UNLV basketball has legitimate brand power, guys. It really does. It has some cachet, not because of anything it's done, but just because of its location. UNLV campus is the home of Summer League. It's the home of Team USA. It's got legitimate brand power. It does. It's got legitimate advantages. It's got unbelievable practice facilities. It's got all the resources in the world to succeed. And the sheer interest, 653 people watching live right now. The minute they start winning consistently, I don't think it's going to happen, overnight. You're not going to suddenly see 10,000 people in the Thomas and Mack from one game to the next. But 1 year of winning, the next year, the Thomas and Mack is going to be in a raucous home court environment. Yeah, I mean, Dave Rice got a home game essentially at the T-Mobile Arena with Duke, in 2016. UNLV is a brand. It is a brand. It is a brand. We have a national championship hanging in our gym, and the players who played in that national championship, Larry Johnson, Greg Anthony, those guys, Stacey Ogman, those guys are still relevant. People still know who they are. People still know who, Larry Johnson, Grandmama. People still know that. People still know who Jerry Tarkanian is. This is UNLV's chance. knock this hire out of the park. Go get your guy. The student section is dying for buckyball. Yeah. Unfortunately, my time as a student at UNLV was very short. I had 2 years, and my time as a student is coming to a close as I graduate from law school this year. But a year from now, guys, the Thomas and Mack, the conference tournament, it's not going to be like it was on Thursday night. It's not going to be 5-1 Utah State fans to UNLV fans. We're going to have a real coach. I'm not saying he's going to go to the NCAA tournament year one. We're going to have a real coach with real with real cachet, with confidence. He's going to be a marketer, and we're going to be back, guys. We're going to be back. UNLV basketball's, you let the world know we're going to be back up. We're going to be back up, guys. We got this. We're going to make a good hire. Eric Harper, say what you want about him, the whole Pac-12 situation, the guy can make a hire. UNLV basketball couldn't afford another year like this with the empty Thomas and Mack. They couldn't afford it. Fiscally, it did not make sense to retain Kevin Kruger. In a fiscally responsible way, it did not make sense to retain Kevin Kruger, and that's why the school ultimately let him go. The $2.35 million buyout, I feel bad for Kevin. I'm happy that his family has some level of security, financial security. Filling the Mac up pays for that buyout. Kings of Vegas is making a new documentary. Yep, I know that Twitter account has been compiling stuff for you about UNLV basketball. It's going to make an awesome documentary. But filling up the Mac is going to pay for that buyout. So, guys, thank you, Kevin Kruger. Thank you to the Kruger family. Thank you to the players and the coaches that have tried their best over the last 4 years to bring Kevin to bring this program where it needs to be. But it's a new dawn and a new day for UNLV basketball. And I think the city is going to respond positively to this news. The city rejected Kevin, and the city wants UNLV basketball to be good, believe it or not. And it's going to be good, guys. And I'm going to be there covering it every step of the way. So can't wait for football. I will have more shows as we figure out new coaches. There's tons of stuff to cover as candidate names come up, as rumors come out, and I'll be there covering it all. So please subscribe to the Let's Run podcast. It's in my Twitter bio. It's a Substack, but you can also subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm on all the major networks. And yeah, let's do it, guys. Let's run, Rebels. And thank you, Kevin Kruger. Goodbye, guys.